Hello and welcome to 5 Year Club video number 304, Nerdy Book Edition. The first article I found tonight was about how we're in an everything bubble, meaning that stocks are inflated, bonds are inflated, housing is inflated, real estate's inflated, that personal wealth compared with, I think it was GDP, or household wealth compared with GDP, or maybe it was corporate earnings, I forget. Anyway, was at like an all-time high, and that wasn't sustainable because it was at like 505% instead of a historical average of like 379%, something like that. And so as a result, like it couldn't last, and it would fall. And the guy says the way it's going to fall is that the Federal Reserve is going to continue increasing interest rates until something breaks. And when that thing breaks, perhaps it will be corporate debt. We've talked about before on this channel how corporations, while interest rates are low, have taken out a lot of debt. When that thing breaks, then we get a bad recession, and that recession will be worse than previous recessions because the government will be less able to deal with it. It will have fewer tools in the toolbox to deal with it. But I chose not to present that article. Why? Because I looked up the author, as I am wont to do, and the author is just like some guy who doesn't appear to be particularly qualified to talk about this stuff, and I just don't want to present some guy to you. I want things that are more credible. So, yeah, I moved to a different subject. It got me thinking, though. It got me thinking, what is a great source for learning more about the Federal Reserve, specifically the history of the Federal Reserve? Because what I want to understand is how has the Federal Reserve moved interest rates up and down over time in response to what? And then what happened? What's their track record? How good are they at predicting the future and controlling it? Because that's clearly what they're trying to do in this instance, right? They're not raising rates because they think it's the wrong thing. They're raising rates because they think it's the right thing. And they think that they can know what the right thing is. Anyway, I looked around a bit, and I seemed to find like two types of books that are more popular. Number one, these historical things, America's Bank, The Epic Struggle to Create the Federal Reserve. And then there are some that are more conspiratorial. Let's see if we can find one of those, The Power and Independence of the Federal Reserve. Lords of Finance I actually already read, and I'm kind of I didn't hugely enjoy that book, but it was okay. And then there are some, I'm looking for it. There are some that are more conspiratorial. The Creature from Jekyll Island. The House of Rothschild. Yeah, but it's funny. I've seen a number of these books. Anyway, I'm not really into the conspiracy books. I want things that are just more like facts. So the best thing that I found, move these front and center, not that one. The best thing I found is this series by a man named Alan H. Meltzer, or a man who was named Alan H. Meltzer. Unfortunately, he died in 2017, so these three books will be his last words on the Federal Reserve. But I think he has a pretty distinguished background. Was an American economist and Alan H. Meltzer professor, so he had a chair named after him, of political economy at Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business and Institute for Politics and Strategy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Meltzer specialized on studying monetary policy and the U.S. Federal Reserve System, and authored several academic papers and books on the development and applications of monetary policy and about the history of central banking in the U.S. Together with Carl Brunner, he created the Shadow Open Market Committee, a monetarist council that deeply criticized the Federal Open Market Committee. So yeah, he spent his life studying this stuff. It was a pretty long life. He died at 89 and went to Duke and got a PhD. So yeah, he spent a lot of time looking at this. Not necessarily that he's correct about everything, right? But it takes some effort. Why? Because this book is 800 pages. This is the second book. It's 700 pages. And this is the third book, and I think it's around 600 pages. Right. Okay, so 800 plus 700 is 1,500 plus 600, over 2,000 pages of Federal Reserve history. And he's got a 5-star on that one and a 5-star on this one. They are, in fact, different books. Good. And then a little 4-star on this one. And granted, you know, not a huge number of reviews here, right? This obviously isn't going to be the most thrilling book in the world. But yeah, but you know, it's, I think, one of the most it seems kind of comprehensive because it's covering this time period, 1913 to 1986 in total. It's by a guy who dedicated his life to studying it, who has a PhD, and it's a lot of pages. The thing that I'm sad about is that there doesn't appear to be an audio version of this book. And an 800-page book about the Federal Reserve seems like it's going to be pretty difficult for me to get through. In fact, I would bet against myself getting through it because I just don't sit down and read books that are hundreds of pages these days. Typically, I read more short-form things online. There's also that Ray Dalio book on market cycles that I want to get to, and it's a PDF. So, bummer, you know. Probably won't work. But I wanted to make this the subject of my video today so that you would be aware of this series, so that you know that if you want to educate yourself about the Federal Reserve System, you can do it. Here is, 2,000 pages worth of book by a qualified person to tell you what is going on with the Federal Reserve System. I wish that somebody would read this in audio form. In fact, maybe that's what I should just do next year. I should be like, I'm going to read a history of the Federal Reserve next year. 10 pages a day. So I should finish in about 80 days. That would be a crunch. It would be doable, though. It would be doable, but it seems like it would be a challenge. On the other hand, that January, February, March time period, that is a money-saving time period for me. So I'm going to be at home probably anyway. We'll think about it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed a little bit of exposure to some books that otherwise you might not be nerdy enough to find. And save some money. Have a fabulous evening.